the metagame shifts, as it
Yeah.
were.
Also, I think Patrick Chapin's a pretty good player, so I think,
Yeah, he probably did a little bit of work.
he knew what he was doing
On his
I think,
way.
with that deck. So, yeah, we've actually got a match here. Richard Nguyen on the left with Naya, 5-0, both of these players. Wayne Mitchell, also 5-0, of course.
I actually think that they're 4-1.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we'll check on that for you. But
We'll get that double checked.
Bant Hexproof from Wayne Mitchell. I'm both happy and sad to see Bant Hexproof picking up in because I don't want it to be very ubiquitous.
Sure.
It's one of those decks that can probably get real annoying real fast.
We do need it is Bant Hexproof, not a Bant Hexprof.
That's right.
Up at the top there. We'll get that
Just
fixed up real
spell
quick.
check there, yeah.
Unless Wayne's version is, Fantastic Four oriented or something.
Yes,
Maybe he's got a lot
the
of
Hex
alters.
Professor. He's got to teach you a thing or two.
But yeah, we have Richard Nguyen. Naya has been his speed for quite a while in Standard. He's made a couple Open Series top 8s this year. I believe he started it off up in this area, actually, not Philadelphia, but in the one that was won by Billy P. Playing Jun. I know Richard played Undying Evil Naya.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember where that was.
I think
I was there. Was it Providence?
Yeah, it was Providence.
Yeah.
You're right. He managed to top 8 there, and then he came back to Baltimore, managed to top 4 there before being dispatched by Brad Nelson, the eventual victor.
Yeah, that was just a few weeks ago, of course, with the Junk Aristocrats deck we were just talking about.
Yep.
So looks like we're going to.
That looks like a mulligan.
Yeah,
Either
it's a
that or
mulligan
this is
for-
a sweet Archmage Ascension or something going on. All right, Richard is playing Naya, as we just discussed. Back in Baltimore, he played a version a little bit more oriented on Aaron Barich's style from the Dallas Open. But this version it's kind of taking things a little bigger. He's not running the Experiment ones and whatnot that deck employed. He's turned to Avacyn's Pilgrims, so it's a little more like Edelnaya, which we saw top 2 Grand Prix Guadalajara. But his list is significantly different from Willie's. He's worked in some Advent of the Worms. He's not running Domri. He's cut those for just more pump spells and removal spells. He's got 4 Searing Spear, 2 Pillar Flame, 2 Bonfire, 3 Selesnya Charm, and a Singleton Blasphemous Act in the main deck to go along with his 2 Advents. I don't know about some of these spells. Richard has a particular affinity for Bonfire of the Damned that I do not share. I know I've seen him shoehorn it into a lot of Naya decks, but I do like Blasphemous Act, actually. I was testing some Naya decks I'd seen pop up on Moto. Marsh Usuri actually had played a version with Voice of Resurgence and Strangler Geist and Boros Reckoner that just ran like 2 Blasphemous Acts in the main deck and just randomly got people.
Right.
You could actually get a little bit of value there.
Sometimes it's just going to happen.
Yeah, and it looks like Richard's adopted it. It's obviously very good in some of these mirrors, and it's also a nice card. You can just be in spots where you're like, man, I wish I could draw a Blasphemous Act right now, and boom, there it is.
Just to point out, or to correct what we said earlier, it was actually in D.C. where he played the Undying Evil.
Oh, DC. Okay.
I could picture the ballroom that we were in, but I remember it looking very similar to that in Providence, but that was back in the fall, so makes a lot more sense. It was much more recent in D.C. where he came in 3rd. His opponent, Wayne Mitchell, is on that Bant Hexproof list. It's a pretty typical looking list, except for he's got 2 copies of a Johnny Color of the Pride.
Ooh.
So that's a card that has yet to make a real impact in Standard. I think it's been in a few more lists than, say, Tybalt, but it's yet to really make too much of a dent in Standard or in any format.
Wayne's
any
list
constructed format.
Wayne's list for this deck is actually pretty creature light. He's running just the 4 Geist, 4 Invisible Stalker, 4 Voice, and then he's cut a Pilgrim going down to 3. That's not that unusual. And then only 2 Strangleroot Geist. Most people run like 4 of an auxiliary creature, but Wayne is running just the 2 Strangleroot Geist, I guess making room for those as Johnnies. He's also doing a split on Selesnya Charm and Simic Charm. Most people prefer one or the other. Wayne apparently prefers access to both, and it certainly makes combat much more difficult. For instance, blocking against a Simic Charm is a lot easier than blocking against a Selesnya Charm, but when your opponent has access to both, it gets very, very difficult.
Yeah, it's the whole same kind of thing that you see out of decks that run a lot of 1-ofs. Just having like a 1-of, say, Syncopate or something. They're going to play around Syncopate for the rest of the game if you Syncopate their first spell. Cards like that. I think that's I like to see these kind of splits. If you really aren't sure on one or the other, I think you get some value out of making your opponent play around one that you may or may not have.
One of the important differences between the two is Selesnya Charm can be a creature. Perhaps Wayne's leaning on that functionality, and that was his logic. You know, I've cut 2 of my normal auxiliary creatures, so rather than go with all these Simic Charms, I'll shoehorn in a couple Selesnya Charms. That kind of bridges the gap between my Ajani and my lack of, Fencing Ace or Strangler Geist at the 2-drop slot.
Yeah, it gets the extra play against, Thundermaw Hellkite or the big creatures that tend to come out later in the games.
Personally, I'm a Selesnya Charm man. I love the spell. Love the spell. Big fan. Big fan.
It's a good charm. I love all the charms, really. Not equally though. I think Selesnya Charm, Simic Charm are up there in the top 5. I think. I mean, you got to go with Azorius and Boros as the first, the best charms.
Sure.
So we're underway. Both players leading on a dual land coming into play tapped.
Yeah, Wayne's is a shock land, indicating he has no Pilgrim. Richard, he just doesn't have shock lands. So he's starting on Buddy lands and gets a Pilgrim to kind of, push that tempo a little bit more. Wayne, obviously under a little bit of pressure when he sees a Pilgrim, doesn't know exactly what's going on. Maybe Richard's Jund, maybe Richard's Naya, has to kind of figure it out. Leads with a Stalker.
And both players on 6 cards, by the way. Wayne also mulliganed after Richard kept his 6. So we see a Rancor in Wayne's hand that is just itching to be put on that Stalker. But first, Richard has a turn to take, and he's going to swing with his Avacyn's Pilgrim.
Wayne debated blocking there, it seemed. He thought about it for a second, but declined to. And Richard has no play, so he's just going to ship the turn. Interesting choice. I feel like I would rather have just made a 2/2 Vigilant Knight, probably, than got in that 1 damage. I believe he has a Selesnya Charm in his hand.
Wayne definitely does, because I think he just drew it for the turn. But
sure.
He's going to Rancor up this Invisible Stalker, and he's going to follow that up with a Strangleroot Geist, and both guys are going to crash in. So 5 damage to Richard this turn.
Yep. Richard has Pillar Flame, it looks like, one of his 2 main deck copies, already at the ready. So the Strangleroot Geist, not long for this world, but Invisible Stalker is currently a 5-turn clock. And if Wayne draws any additional auras that he can enchant it with, that will change quickly. Fortunately for Richard, Wayne's mana situation means that most of his auras are blanks. He can only draw Spectral Flights and Rancors right now. So that gives Richard some breathing room.
He may have a Spectral Flight in hand. I saw something blue. It's either another Stalker.
I believe it's another Stalker.
Yeah, I think it is too.
Richard apparently drew a Boros Reckoner, was debating just slamming it immediately, but now is reconsidering. I think he's a little wary of that Strangleroot Geist.
Yeah, if he's got the Pillar, I think now is a reasonable time to go ahead and just take it out. No, he's going to go with the Reckoner.
It doesn't really shorten the Invisible Stalker's clock. Taking 2 damage to the face will really just, leave him on the same amount of turns from an Invisible Stalker and from even an additional aura, perhaps. The problem here is that it's probably just going to trade with Stalker if he blocks, and if he lets the 2 damage come in for the Stalker, he's kind of given up a little bit of tempo. Then another 2 damage from the Stalker will matter. So I imagine he has to plan to not block here, as he just, if he was going to be willing to trade his Boros Reckoner for a Strangleroot Geist, why wouldn't he just play the Pillar of Flame in the first place?
Right. See a Avacyn's Pilgrim off the top for Wayne.
It's bad news for Richard. It's not a card he's going to want to see. That means he'll probably have to spend next turn on Pillar Flame and Searing Spear.
So Stalker's going to go ahead and get in there for 3, going to knock Richard to 12.
Surprised that Wayne didn't attack with the Strangleroot Geist.
Yeah, holding it back. So there's the Avacyn's Pilgrim, and followed by a Invisible Stalker number 2.
The issue with holding back the Strangleroot Geist here is it's not going to block Boros Reckoner, because then Richard can use the trigger to kill Avacyn's Pilgrim, and Wayne should know he needs white mana.
Right.
Access to it's going to be very important. So I think that just sending in the Strangleroot Geist was fine. There wasn't really a bad thing that could happen. If Richard blocks, you just kill his Boros Reckoner and have a 3/2. If Richard doesn't block, you just get in 2 damage. That's a win-win. Now Richard's Mana Screw is catching up to him. He's on the defensive, and he has to spend some time removing cards from the board that aren't even killing him. The 2 Stalkers are the biggest threats. Can't handle them.
Richard thinking about what he wants to do here. It appears he doesn't have a land drop, or at least the 2nd consecutive turn.
Yeah, he's still lacking.
Reckoner's going to go ahead and swing.
Interesting choice.
And it looks like Wayne's just going to take it.
At this point, Richard might even be just playing towards that one of Blasphemous Act, as that seems like the most likely way for him to scoot back into this game. Oh, did we draw? We did draw land.
Okay, so there's
Temple
a Temple
Garden.
Right.
Puts it into play tapped, wisely so. And we'll be Pillar Flaming that Stranglegeist and probably just holding up Searing Spear for the Avacyn's Pillar.
Oops, just dropped Thundermaw Hellkite.
Yeah.
So the Pillar Flame does take out the Strangleroot Geist as Richard accidentally shows a Thundermaw Hellkite.
Yeah, important for Wayne to know about it, as now he has to be aware of exactly what Richard's clock is. It's possible he could catch up against these Strangleroot Geists. It doesn't seem incredibly likely. He needs to draw some lands and he needs Wayne to blank, but both of those things could happen. Richard passes. I feel like you really want to kill that Avacyn's Pilgrim.
Yeah, he decides not to, and looks like a Geist of Saint Traft off the top for Wayne, just in time to make use of some of that white mana.
Yeah, Richard's plan is definitely to just end steps, put that Selesnya Charm in, but we talked about that play on turn 3.
Yeah.
He had access to it then, and if he had made it then, Wayne would be at 1 more life, but a 2/2 Vigilant Knight would have been attacking pretty much the entire time.
Yeah.
So that 1 life would have been immediately made up, and Richard also wouldn't be taking time off this turn to cast it.
Right.
So I think that we saw the 1 damage he made there was probably not worth it.
So there you see Geist of Saint Traft hitting the table to follow up the attack from 2 Invisible Stalkers, one with a Rancor, so another 4 damage knocks Richard to 8.
That threatens lethal next turn. The Geist Angel token in conjunction with 4 unblockable damage from Invisible Stalker means Richard has to kill Geist, Invisible Stalker, or Invisible Stalker this turn.
Yeah.
Or he will be dead without a flying blocker. He does have access to Restoration Angel and Thundermaw Hellkite, so he can make one. But the Restoration Angel obviously not going to do it for long. And the Thundermaw Hellkite, I don't think I've ever seen that card enter play on tap before in my entire life. So this would be a first if that was what ended up happening.
It looks like he's going to go ahead and, well, he's thinking about either Selesnya Charm or potentially he's got a Searing Spear. I mean, he tapped 2. Going to go with the Spear.
We're spearing that Pilgrim a turn too late for it to have done enough, or is he going to the face?
Oh,
he's going to the face. He's playing to his 1-outer Blasphemous Act, I think.
Wayne at 13. Is it Blasphemous Act? It's not.
Sun Petal Grove. It's close.
It was almost the same thing.
Well, from here, all he can really do is play the Thundermaw Hellkite and pass, I think. Or he can Restoration Angel and block, I suppose.
He's going to swing. I guess that means Restoration Angel is likely to come down.
Yeah, to be fair, the Restoration Angel is much less vulnerable to than the Thundermaw Hellkite, as it can't be Selesnya Charmed. We happen to know via our omniscience that Wayne has a Selesnya Charm, but Richard could still just decide to play around it. It's pretty reasonable. And by doing so, he would, buy another turn, potentially be able to find a kill for Wayne. He won't have lethal even with it. Even if he goes Restoration Angel to chump block this turn, he still doesn't have lethal damage, even if Hellkite goes through unblocked alongside Boros Reckoner, because Wayne will just still be at 2 life, even taking 8.
So in with the Reckoner knocks Wayne to 10. Wayne's turn now draws Unflinching Courage.
Yeah.
Is that what that is? Yeah.
Well, yeah. Wayne's probably just going to be tempted to go ahead and drop that on Invisible Stalker. You know what? I can't blame him. That will lock out virtually anything Richard could possibly do except for Blasphemous Act. So that will put Richard legitimately on the 1-outer. No longer playing towards it, now just nothing else he can do.
There's absolutely no other out. Wayne, though, still trying to figure out what he wants to do this turn. He's got to be thinking about Restoration Angel. Just the fact that he knows there's a Thundermaw Hellkite in Richard's hand, and he declined to cast it. So if that doesn't give away the fact that one of those cards is a Restoration Angel, I don't know what does.
This is a close game. I honestly think that turn 3 Selesnya Charm and just going Pillar Flame Searing Spear on Pilgrim and Geist might have actually been enough to win it for Richard. It's tough to say, but based on the draw steps that we've seen, I think that would have worked out. Obviously, Wayne still only has those blue-green lands, so he just wouldn't be able to cast the 3 spells he's drawn since that Pilgrim.
Yeah.
And that probably would have raced down these Invisible Stalkers.
So he's going to go ahead and swing in with both Stalkers and Geist of Saint Traft, of course, alongside an Angel token. Does not cast that Unflinching Courage that we thought he might want to.
I'm surprised, but honestly, it makes sense. He's got that Selesnya Charm, so if Richard taps out, he can use the Selesnya Charm to get the same +2/+2 and trample. The reason I actually like the Unflinching Courage in the first place is just because the life gain is a better safety net.
Right, to the Blasphemous Act.
Yep.
So there you see the Restoration Angel from Richard. Richard's going to blink the Boros Reckoner. At least he's choosing it as the target creature.
Yep.
And Wayne looks at his hand. Not really any options there. And so Reckoner blinked, successfully untapped, and looks like Restoration Angel's going to chump block the 4/4 Angel. Boros Reckoner's going to get in front of Geist of St. Traft, and Invisible Stalkers obviously not blocked since they are unblockable.
Yeah, now he's going to have to cast that Selesnya Charm now, or just never cast it again. And I imagine he's going to choose for casting it now.
Yeah, so here we see him tapping.
Will he save his Geist? Or go for the Angel to get in more damage?
He's going to save his Geist here.
Yeah.
I
That'll
like that.
mean he takes 1 more damage.
Yeah.
But gets in 1 more on Richard as well. Richard will fall to 3. And Wayne will take 3, presumably go to 7. But Richard, has an Absence Program, 4 lands, Thundermaw Hellkite against an opponent on 7 life. It's not likely to cut it. He can, however, I guess he can peel a Bonfire. That's also a line now.
Yeah. So
technically, it was presumably a line before, except that the Unflinching Courage would have gained him a significant amount of life.
So it looks like we're resolving combat here, and they're trying to do the.
Unless something.
Well,
has gone grievously awry. Richard should be at 3 life. He was at 8, took 4, and then 1 trample.
Yeah, I've got 3, and I've got Wayne at 6 because the Geist dealt 4 to the Reckoner.
It dealt 3 to the Reckoner because 1 goes to Richard through trample.
Oh, I'm sorry, the trample. Yeah.
So it should be 3 to 7.
Yeah, that looks right to me. So Richard draws his card for the turn. Does not put it in his hand, but it is not Bonfire.
Yeah.
It is another Boros Reckoner. So not quite the card he wanted there.
No, that's going to be it. Richard's dead. No outs. And he dies with the Selesnya Charm in his hand.
Yeah.
I think, like I said before, we can trace this game back to that turn 3 choice to attack with Absence Program rather than make a 2/2 Vigilant Knight.
Richard really trying to
I mean, at this point, his opponent having a stroke is about the only way he could win. So.
Stroke of Genius isn't even legal on Standard.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. If he had a Stroke of Genius,
yeah, that would
Richard would get the win.
Right, okay, I got it.
But
looks like a Temple Garden, I believe, off the top for Wayne. But Boros Reckoner is the only thing that Richard is able to muster here, and trying to potentially, I don't know what he's trying to really even bluff here, because
there are very few believable things he could bluff here. The only, like, a handful of them are, like Fog or like a main deck Ray of Revelation or something crazy like that.
Yeah. Unflinching Courage on my Invisible Stalker. The same one that is holding the Rancor.
All right. Picks him up. All right.
Going to game 2. Wayne Mitchell with the win there in game 1 versus Richard Nguyen. And I'm going to go to the sideboards. If you're just joining us, I'm Joey Pasco in the booth with Glenn Jones, and we're coming to you guys live from Philadelphia, where the StarCityGames.com Standard Open Series is underway, nearly 6 rounds deep. We're in the middle of round 6.
Yep. And we've got Richard down 1 game against Wayne Mitchell's. Yes, wow, those names sound similar. Bant Hexproof. And Richard's going to be sideboarding Naya. Moving to his sideboard, he will certainly be bringing in his 2nd copy of Blasphemous Act. This is one of the matchups where it's at its best. I imagine he'll bring in additional copies of Bonfire of the Damned. It's not the awesomest card. It's very easy to get a creature outside of its range, but it's still better than a lot of the stuff he might have in his deck at this juncture. Also worth pulling in are 2 Oblivion Rings, as they can remove any of a variety of auras, and a Singleton Ray of Revelation, which is always good for 2 auras. So he's going to be bringing in certainly the Blasphemous Act, the 2 Oblivion Rings, and the Ray of Revelation. That's 4 cards, and probably 2 more Bonfire of the Damned. And as far as sideboarding out, just looking at the deck, his Searing Spears are pretty underwhelming. The most he can really do with them is remove an Absence Program or send 3 to the Dome. I'd be cutting those for sure. Advent of the Worm, and Thundermaw Hellkite are both pretty slow. I think I would prefer to cut the Thundermaw Hellkites as far as trimming goes. As Advent of the Worm, you can leave open mana. If your opponent, suddenly adds a bunch of auras, maybe you have that Ray of Revelation and you can go ahead and spend it. Whereas Thundermaw Hellkite kind of locks you in addition to being more expensive. So I think that's where I would go, is cutting the Searing Spears and some, if not all, of the Thundermaw Hellkites.
On Wayne's side, he doesn't have a lot of obvious, like, hey, slam dunk, bring this in cards. He doesn't have a lot of bad cards necessarily either. He's got 4 copies of Advent of the Worm. I don't know that that's the direction he wants to go with this, but I feel like it's a nice surprise factor. But I don't really think that that's necessarily something he goes for. He's got Rest in Peace, Sigarda, Rootborn Defenses, Centaur Healer, and Fog. Fog is a card that I feel like he might want to bring it in just to give himself maybe one extra turn, because there's times when he's going to be able to build up a Geist or a Stalker or something, and just needs to survive maybe one more turn against the Naya deck, and Fog might be able to buy him that time, but I'm not even sure of that particularly. Anything that jumps out at you? Honestly,
if I'm Wayne, I'm not sideboarding at all.
Okay.
I think that Wayne has constructed his sideboard pretty reasonably for the matchups that trouble his deck. Primarily, control decks and like heavy control decks, like with edict effects.
Right, he's got the Sigardas and the Advent of the Worms and even Rootbound Defenses to deal with.
And decks like mono red or the red green aggro decks. Those are the decks that are tough. So against those red green aggro decks, he has access to Fog, Centaur Healers. Against Reanimator, he can bring in those 2 Rest in Pieces.
Right.
This really seems like kind of a nail in the coffin kind of deal. As his deck should be pretty well suited to be Reanimator. But against control decks, he can use this plan that I know was championed by Paulo Vitor da Rosa, a number of the Brazilian guys. They started boarding Rootborn Defenses and Advent of the Worms in their banned hexproof decks, so that when they're paired up against decks like Jund and these control decks, they can just shift gears into being like a real deck, play like a fish style deck and board out a bunch of the auras, so you're not as all in on the hexproof plan. The problem here is that Richard's deck is actually pretty vulnerable to the hexproof plan, and it's totally fine against a bunch of Advent of the Worms. He's got Boros Reckoners and Lockstone Smiters. He's totally fine playing a fair game. So I don't think that Mitchell wants to make that move. If I'm Mitchell, I'm sideboarding very little, if anything. I might bring in one Fog, just because drawing one Fog is going to be pretty sweet in these racing situations. And when I'm on the draw, that's when it's going to be at its best. But when I'm back on the play, I would sideboard up the Fog back out and go back to my starting 60.
Yeah, I like that plan. And this is the kind of deck. It's strange to call it this, but it almost feels like a combo deck.
It is a combo deck.
I mean, it's attacking, but you're really just putting together a combo that's just unstoppable. You've got unblockable guys and untargetable guys, and some that are unblockable and untargetable, and you basically just combo those with enchantments, and that's how you want to win the game. Something that your opponents aren't able to deal with at all. So
now I did spot Rootborn Defenses in Wayne's hand, so it looks like he brought that in. It's possible he just wants, defenses against Bonfire. Obviously, I don't think he expects Blasphemous Act, but it works there too.
Right.
I think that bringing in one, maybe both of those, is also a reasonable line. It's the same kind of thing as the Fog.
Sure.
In that, seeing one, not going to usually hurt you that much. You should probably be able to eke a reasonable amount of value out of it. The problem is that it really kind of dilutes your deck, and so that's why I'm not a fan of it. But it's a defensible choice.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with the, referring to it or comparing it to a combo deck where, a lot of times you're just trying to reach this critical mass and watering down your deck with cards that don't work towards your combo can sometimes, put you in a bad position.
The Goblin Charbelcher conundrum, if you will. Most players have come to respect the fact that really Goblin Charbelcher probably is a deck that shouldn't sideboard.
Right.
Because you're not very likely to actually improve your chances to win a game of Magic with it after you start changing that initial configuration. Xanted Storm is sweet and all, but is it actually going to win you the match? No, probably not. It's an 0-1 for a green mana. Come on.
Yeah. So Wayne looks like he's going to... he's mulligan to 6.
I think it's a hand with no white mana, but some excellent spells. This is where we get to see the kind of man that Wayne is.
Right, I see Breeding Pool. I think I saw Hinterland Harbor.
And I think I saw Forest. So it looks like Wayne says keep. Yep, I'm gonna live or die.
Yeah, by the white mana. I mean, he had trouble with white mana last game too, but he's got 12 sources in the deck.
He has the expected number, really.
And there you go, right off the top, Hallowed Fountain. It was the right play all along.
Yeah, of course.
Richard has Avacyn's Pilgrim turn 1. Wayne with that Hallowed Fountain. And
Had it.
Yeah.
Richard's going to attack for 1. I anticipate Voice of Resurgence being his 2-drop, as that's the only 2-drop in his deck other than Selesnya Charm.
Which he obviously doesn't like to play on turn 2.
Yes, clearly.
Or 3 even. We'll see. Looks like Voice of Resurgence is the play. Alright, so for Wayne's second turn, draws a Ethereal Armor there.
This game he's just going to be pretty much probably all in on that Geist from the look of things.
You see he's got a Selesnya Charm, Geist of St. Traft, that Ethereal Armor I mentioned, a Rancor.
He's just going to try and make a giant Geist and bludgeon Richard to death. However, Richard is on the play, and he has a good curve, so I think Richard has the edge here.
Yeah, he's going to get a head start in this race, and he's already attacked for 1 with the Pilgrim, now he's going to attack for 2 with the Voice of Resurgence, going to knock Wayne to 17. And looks like he's got the follow-up in Boros Reckoner.
It seems he intends to cast the Restoration Angel, otherwise I don't know why he wouldn't attack with the Pilgrim.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too.
It's perhaps he'll rethink that decision. He's like, oh man, I should have just cast this Reckoner. Now he's going to pass.
So, yeah.
I think it was just correct to get in the attack with the Pilgrim and play Reckoner, so I would chalk that up to perhaps an error that Richard, now is like, I don't want to really like.
So Geist of St. Traft comes down on turn 3 for Wayne, and Richard ends the turn with that Restoration Angel.
And he draws a land, and I imagine we're just land, Thundermaw Hellkite, attack for 10.
Yeah.
Is this good?
Is that good?
That will actually, pretty fairly race even an Unflinching Courage. Wayne will have to do better than Unflinching Courage.
I don't even think he has access to it, even if he...
Right.
Yeah. Even if he were to have Unflinching Courage.
An additional Thundermaw Hellkite in Richard's hand pretty much all but seals this game. Is he not going to attack with a Voice? I think that would perhaps be folly. That would actually, give Wayne the ability to go untap, like Unflinching Courage, Rancor, actually get in for 6, gain 6 back, and that's not the kind of gain back you want.
Yeah,
does this math work out the same? Because it puts Wayne to 9 and leaves him with 11, 12, 13. No, this would be enough. An Unflinching Courage plus a Rancor would actually put Wayne back in on the race.
We're going to see that Ethereal Armor on the Geist, along with a Rancor. And hey, why not another Rancor?
Yep.
So this Geist, he's going to attack.
It's a big Geist, and it will improve Richard's clock by giving him an Elemental token should he block, which he almost certainly will. And he'll be threatening lethal almost immediately.
Yeah, is that a 9-power Geist? Am I doing the math right?
Yep, 9 power. Yeah, Wayne will be dead on the next turn, and Richard's play will actually work out just fine. In my math, I did neglect to count the Pilgrim among the lands, so there's really just no way out.
Yeah, it's hanging out there with the lands.
Yeah, and Wayne does the math, realizes that if he attacks with his Geist, he's actually dead on board. Little does he know, Richard has the Thundermaw Hellkite. He's dead.
He's dead anyway, yeah. So Richard able to get that start that he wants against Wayne's deck, even though Wayne had actually, I think he had a pretty decent start himself. He was just a little behind. He didn't have a turn 1.
He didn't have a turn 1 or a turn 2. That's actually pretty dismal
against
for him.
That kind of start.
Yeah.
That kind of
on the draw, he really needs to have a Pilgrim on 1 to make Richard either race it or take the time out of his own development to remove it from play. So those are important. And a Geist on turn 3 against Naya. It hasn't been good since Geist of St. Traft has been legal, really.
Right.
That's just not where you want to be on the draw. Going back to the sideboard, we can see it does look like Wayne is perhaps adjusting a little bit. Richard is adjusting a lot bit from the looks of things.
Wayne, I believe, is just siding in planes. Just wants that white mana. But he had Selesnya Charm, I believe, in his hand. I wonder... I don't know that it would have mattered, actually. He would have still
could
been
have
in bad shape,
rancored and passed, perhaps.
Right,
yeah.
and still had an answer for the Hellkite. But he may have just, died the next turn.
I think that his issue there was he actually got ahead of himself. He didn't realize the Elemental token would represent lethal if he made it. So, because he started with the ethereal armor before doing anything else, right?
Right.
So that kind of, he probably just wound up, oh man, I should have just Rancor and Slezzy Charm. Once you've made that error, there's nothing else to do.
Yeah.
You play as best you can from the position, which is, what he did. He held back his guy and hoped he wasn't going to be dead to a Thunder Mohawk, right?
Yeah.
Didn't work out that way. Yeah.
So both players making some adjustments. I see some Boros charms either. Looks like they're coming out of Richard's deck.
I think if they were in his deck in the first place, it's possible he's just fronting a little, maybe slide some cards in and out. If they were in his deck, I think that's an okay decision to make on the play, as you're going to be in a strictly racing situation in a lot of games. Mm. And on the play, you have a pretty large advantage. That 4 damage to the face will just execute the opponent on the spot a lot of the time. Or giving, your Thunder Mahawkite double strike. That does the trick too.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So I think that on the draw, though, it's not really tenable to try and get them on the face. By the time you're trying to cast a Boros Charm, they could have already played an Unflinching Courage and hit you with it. So the Boros Charm's functionality would be close to nil. Personally, I prefer to always adopt a pseudo-controlling role against Van Hextooth, but that's because I hate losing to it. And you get these racing situations, and that's where that deck beats you. You try to race it, and it just runs faster.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that deck. Several different people saying that it's underplayed. I wonder if those people feel like maybe, it's shown up now today on camera twice, at least. I don't think a third time, but Wayne here with it 5-0, so we may be seeing him well on his way to a top 8 berth. We'll see if he can take out Richard Nguyen here in this round. But
yeah. Frank Scarron is also in 4-1.
That's right. He was the other one playing Van Hextooth. So.
And I've seen some interesting lists popping up online, actually. One of the recent ones I saw was being played by Steve Mann online, and it played 4 Predator Ooze.
Wow.
And replaced the Avacyn's Pilgrims with Arbor Elves, and shifted things around so you were running more forests. And that struck me as a pretty interesting development to the deck. I'm not sure if it improves the red-green matchup, which has been typically the most troubling.
Right.
It doesn't seem like it's much worse than say Fencing Ace or whatever. In fact, it's probably better. But I imagine the Knight Blitz matchup is significantly improved by Predator Ooze's presence, as he's a pretty big deal against that deck.
Yeah.
They need things like Firefist Striker, or an active frontline medic to escape his clutches.
That's another card where you feel like we get this huge influx of cards every 4 months or every 3 months, and there's cards that just stand out to you, but then just never ever really pan out. They'll have these little flashes, and Predator Ooze I feel like is one of those cards where you've seen it, but it's not. It never seems to be a staple or really stand out, but I like seeing it when I do see it. I guess triple green is probably a good reason for that.
It's prohibitive, I would say, as mana costs go.
Yeah.
Looks like both players shuffling up, getting ready to go underway here.
Yeah, so I think they're going to shuffle each other's decks here a little bit. If you're just joining us, I'm Joey Pasco in the booth with Glenn Jones, coming to you guys live from Philadelphia, where the StarCityGames.com Standard Open Series is underway. We're just getting to, say the last 18.5 minutes of round 6.
Man, that's a good estimate. How'd you know exactly how much time it
Just a guess. Just a guess.
You're probably very close. I couldn't tell you. The Man of Steel watching on Wayne's side of the corner.
No, he's not watching. He's looking at his smartphone. So.
He's there in spirit. All right, we've got our openers. I imagine Wayne is on the play. I see at least a Temple Garden and a Sun Petal Grove.
I saw the same, yeah. Looks a little like land heavy.
Yeah, land heavy, but it looks like Invisible Stalker 2 Spectral Flights.
Whatever it was, he didn't like
it back.
So.
I'm not sure if he had a blue land, to be honest. I think he might have had a harbor, but I didn't really see one for sure.
Yeah, I definitely saw the Temple Garden, the Sun Petal Grove. I think I saw the Invisible Stalker, but yeah, I think
without a blue land, then hand's obviously an auto mulligan.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then we know exactly what happened there. Otherwise, I would say an ambitious mulligan if he had the blue land. It's not like a snap keep or anything, but a stalker that immediately just turns into a gigantic clock is probably pretty good. So my intuition says he didn't have the blue land.
Yeah, I mean, what cards is he really even what cards can even deal with that combination? And it's
Yeah.
just like Bonfire and Blasphemous Act, right?
On the play, he'd be worried about a Miracle Bonfire, or Ray of Revelation, or an Oblivion Ring. Those are the only cards that would probably slow his clock down to the point that he would not be able to win the game. That said, he could also come from the school of mulliganing land-heavy hands. I know when I was playing Junk Aristocrats in the standard season, virtually any hand I picked up that had 5 lands in it, it didn't matter what the other 2 cards were. I just mulliganed those. Like, that's not why I'm here. I want spells. And Bant Hexproof, as you've stated, it's a combo deck. In many ways, it operates on similar ideals. You need a lethal combination. You need multiple spells. So 3 spell hands are not really where you want to be.
So Wayne has actually mulliganed in all 3 games. Pretty sure he mulliganed to 6 in game 1.
True.
He's still able to pull that one out. Mulligans to 6 here, and it looks like he's going to 5.
Going to 5. Richard satisfied with his 7?
It appears that way. He shrugs. I guess
Getting
it's
more and more
he's like,
satisfied, I'm sure.
I'm all right with it. It's fine. I got spells. Just need to win this game. So you've been kind of paying a little more attention to what's out there. Have you seen anything notable that you haven't put on camera?
I've seen some Reanimator players incorporating Progenitor Mimic. That's been interesting. It actually has the nice little bonus of slightly improving their Bant Hexproof matchup, I think. If you can start setting up recurring Thrag Tusks, you can actually erase some of the things that's going on in the Bant Hexproof matchup. And also, it's Unburial Rites on Progenitor Mimic is a solution to Geist Saint Draft that previously did not exist. You just got bludgeoned.
And won't exist in a few weeks.
Yeah, that is true. You've only got so much more time.
You wonder
very soon.
So we had Phantasmal Image in Standard for quite a while.
Yeah.
Not too long ago. Until last fall. And I think a lot of times that card was just used as the 2-mana removal spell for Geist of Saint Traft.
Yeah, it's the best Hero's Demise ever printed.
Yeah. So I wonder, does that card? I think there was discussion about it being too good, maybe as a 2-mana clone. But I wonder if that card now with the new rule change, maybe that opens that up for a reprint. Maybe if, because it's obviously not nearly as good.
Yeah.
Because it's no longer a removal spell.
Under the new rule, I doubt that it would have irked Brian Kibler quite so much. His biggest
that's right.
complaint was
Brian
always
was
that,
big.
Thrun the Last Troll was such a sweet card, and Phantasmal Image just accidentally invalidated it. It was just the worst thing you could be doing, purely by accident.
Was actually the last troll.
Goes to 4. I thought I saw a land in that hand, and I imagine a 1-land 5-er with spells is probably better than most of your 4s. It would have had to be a pretty bad 5 to mulligan, even with only 1 land.
Yeah.
You have to think about your hands from the perspective of how you're planning to improve them. It doesn't matter if a hand is bad if you can't get a better one, or you can't reasonably expect to get a better one.
Right. And it's rough here, going to 4 cards. That's a lot of mulliganing.
Yeah. I've won mulls to 4. I think I've won 3, somewhere between 3 and 5 in my lifetime. I can't really remember exactly how many anymore. I know for a fact I've never won a mull to 3. So.
Yeah, it's
that's apparently where the line ends for me.
It's a story, so you get the potential for the old I mulliganed to 4 and won my match on camera. So if Wayne can pull this, I'm gonna root for him here. I'm gonna root for Wayne. Just
if any
Richard's
deck in Standard can mulligan to 4 and kill someone, it's probably Bant Hexproof.
I was thinking that something like that, or maybe even a Blitz deck. That has the right kind
just
of
something
opening.
with a lethal start. You start on turn 1 land elf, turn 2 Geist, turn 3 Peel enchantments. Bam, bam, bam. Here we go. Wayne hoping for a keepable hand here.
1, 2, 3, 4, stop.
And like I said, I think you just have to keep basically anything here. I think we were close to keeping anything last time. 3 land and a
3 land and a stalker. Well, he can cast a stalker, so it's actually something, right?
It is entirely possible that this hand is actually better than the 5 he mulliganed. I can't tell for sure. That said, I think it's an above average 4, so that's what I'm saying. He had to kind of swing for the fences with it.
So a turn 1 Avacyn's Pilgrim from Richard, and Avacyn's Pilgrim off the top for Wayne. Wayne's going to go ahead and cast the Invisible Stalker, and judging by his board state, you wouldn't even know he mulliganed.
I think I see a bonfire in Richard's hand on the far end there. So
Didn't catch
Wayne
it
could be in
myself.
for a world of hurt.
Well,
That's
there's
an unflinching courage.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, and I believe I meant to cast Loxodon Smiter.
Yeah, Richard has actually a pretty distinctive shuffling habit. If you notice, he really wheels his hand around a lot, and he tends to peel cards out of it. It's very easy to get tripped up by your mana cost when you hold your hand in such
He's
a
already
fashion.
shown his opponent a Thundermaw Hellkite and an Unflinching Courage that he did not mean to cast in this match. So there you see Avacyn's Pilgrim from Wayne to follow up that Smiter from Richard, and Wayne down to 1 card. Did you happen to catch what it was?
No, I did not.
So,
Richard, I imagine, will just be casting Bonfire of the Dam this turn.
I see the Bonfire now right in the middle. And
The only real question is whether he takes a shock to play Avacyn's Pilgrim or attack for 1, or if he just casts the Bonfire. And it looks like he's just going to cast it.
Yeah. So
Attack first. No? Salt it a little. He's going to Bonfire for 1 first. No, just
oh
unflinching.
wow, okay, no Bonfire. He's going to go
All right.
Unflinching Courage.
He's okay with the race. I mean, all of these plays are likely to win him the game. I guess I'm not certain which one is objectively better. I don't like this one that much, mostly because it opens him up to getting Simic Charmed or Selesnya Charmed on the next turn, and he doesn't actually gain that much. He gets 2 for 1 for 6 life.
Loxodon Titan over there.
Yeah.
6/6.
I'm curious why Wayne blocked.
Yeah, so when he did have kind of a land heavy hand. I mean, maybe
sure.
he just
but-
feels like it's worth the 6 life to him. Draws a
well, he takes
Invisible
5
Stalker.
because of the trample.
Yeah, so I guess it wasn't worth 6 life. I'm sorry.
Was it worth 1 life? It's a little.
Yeah,
seems
now,
kind of
I'm
questionable.
actually also curious why Wayne blocked. All right, so Invisible Stalker in for 1, and Invisible Stalker number 2 comes down for Wayne. He passes back.
I have a feeling Richard's done slow rolling that Bonfire now. His opponent's hellbent with 2 Invisible Stalkers. Never seen a better Bonfire in my entire life. Well, that's not true. I've seen some really good
there's
Bonfires,
some good
but
Bonfires
I haven't
out
seen
there.
a more difficult Bonfire.
So Loxodon Smiter going to come over for another 6.
He's gonna block
Wayne
again
is
to save that 1 life.
Yeah, well, maybe he's got the read.
This
on the
seems like a
Bonfire,
man defeated to me.
It's gonna die.
On the
anyway.
upside, that kind of makes Richard's Bonfire feel silly. What are you gonna do now? Kill my 1 Stalker? What a sucker! Richard's probably just gonna continue to play threats instead.
No Bonfire anymore. Yeah.
He has nothing to fear. Like I said, virtually all of his lines are gonna win in this game. Doesn't really matter what he actually does.
Avacyn's Pilgrim is the play from Richard, and Wayne off the top finds. Well, I guess we're gonna find out.
It's a Rancor,
Is it
I
a
believe.
Rancor? Yeah, Rancor on the Invisible Stalker. Not very impressive when your opponent is at 26.
And a Restoration Angel gives Richard lethal damage on the board. Wayne
yeah.
packs it in. Felt like he was pretty much just waiting to die in that game. Didn't really put a lot into it. Extends the
Mulligan to
hand
4, yeah.
immediately after, though. Good sport. I don't know, like that.